This video is not for whales and dolphins, it's for you because you are just like me. Average Jack Gamer here, and today we're going to rank every limited S rank character. We're going to consider them at M0 without their engine. So if there's a character who's particularly engine reliant, they might be a tier lower. If you like this kind of content, then remember, like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, follow on Twitch, all of that kind of stuff. This is in no particular order, but we're going to start with Trigger. Okay, so last time we did this, I put Trigger in tier 1. And I remember because I watched that video just before this one, but I actually think I made a mistake. I think Trigger belongs in tier 2 without her engine. Without her engine, she is an okay pull. Okay, to be clear, we have 3 different categories. We have best pulls, i.e. you could not possibly pull anyone better. Good pulls, these are always going to be pretty good pulls, you should pull them. Okay pulls, may or may not be worth pulling. And then niche pulls, only worth pulling in certain circumstances. But I think without engine, we're going to put Trigger into tier 2 because she is pretty engine reliant, and I kind of regret not putting her in tier 2 before. We talked about it, and I said maybe we should put this into tier 2, and then I left her in tier 1, but I regret it. I think she should be in tier 2. Where do the 3 pigs go? Obviously tier 0. Okay, then we have Evelyn. I said this in my last video about Evelyn. I think Evelyn belongs in tier 1. She is still a good character. She is still a good pull. Because of the fact that she's rerunning right now, people might think that this is me endorsing you to run out and pull Evelyn. I don't think that that's necessarily what I'm saying. I think that, as I said in my previous video about Evelyn, she exists in a perfect spot where they don't have to balance against her, which is really nice for a DPS character because it means that she still gets to benefit from lots of buffs and stuff, and they're not balancing against her. She's still good. She still does really well. She has a pretty F2P friendly teams that can still clear the endgame content, and if you have one of Lighter and Astra, you're absolutely laughing. If you happen to only have Yuzuha and not Astra, it's still pretty good. If you happen to only have Khalida and not Lighter, or if you have a different stunner, like maybe Trigger or something, again, it's still pretty good. Evelyn overall is just good. She's fine. Evelyn needs to be tier 2. If you don't have Astra or Lighter, you're fucked. I don't necessarily agree. I actually think that she doesn't necessarily need them. I cleared with Khalida Lucy, the Pompey, just out of curiosity. I kind of did it just to see whether or not it was something that was like completely feasible, and it was actually fine. It was like 23k. It was better than I thought it was going to be against the current Pompey. Not only that as well, but like there are other options for her as well. Like Trigger's pretty good, Fufu's pretty good, Yuzuha still gives a really big attack buff. So when you start considering other limited S ranks as well, she also works pretty good with them. Orphie also kind of does work with Evelyn. Okay, anyway, let's do Lighter. I think Lighter still goes into tier 1. No change for Lighter. Lighter is a tier 1 agent. The reason he doesn't make it into like the tippy top is that yes, he's the best stunner for like pretty much every fire and ice DPS. However, it is only fire and ice DPS. When we're talking about pull value, we're talking about how much value are you gaining from pulling a particular agent, and you could make the argument that because he only helps with fire and ice DPSs, that he's potentially less valuable than other stun agents who are a little bit more versatile in different circumstances. Yeah, he's niche, but he's really good in that niche. So he belongs in the good tier. We can't put him in the best tier because you can't flex him into... I mean, you can flex him to help you stun faster. You absolutely can, but yeah, he belongs in good tier, all right? Okay, that's the tier. Okay, so hear me out. With all of the anti-Miyabi stuff going on in Deadly Assault, and not so much in Shield Defense, but like somewhat in Shield Defense as well, and the anti-anomaly, she's still the GOAT. I do think that it's something to be aware of is how anti-Miyabi certain things have gotten, and also how pro-Miyabi certain things have gotten. Like when we start thinking about fights like Dead End Butcher, and as the Dead End Butcher continues to get less good anomaly buffs, although at this point, in the current Deadly Assault, the anomaly buff that we actually have is pretty good, but like in the future, potentially less good anomaly buffs plus more HP on Butcher, it's going to get harder and harder to force other ice agents into those kind of fights, which is... I'm kind of setting you up for what I'm going to say about the other ice agents. Okay. All right, Yuzuha. It's the first of our limited S-rank supports. I don't think it'll come as any surprise that she belongs in tier 0. We aren't tiering within the tiers. We never tier within the tiers. It's kind of boring. It just takes too long. We're going to put Yuzuha up in tier 0. She is the anomaly support. She can also flex to support attacker crit-based teams. She still provides the same amount of attack as Astra. Yes, it's slightly less damage bonus because she also provides the disorder damage bonus, but yeah, she deserves her spot. She deserves her spot here, plus the anomaly build-up buff. Then we have Astra. I feel like this is still going pretty well. Astra goes into tier 0. Again, limited S-rank support. She was definitely our first, I think, most valuable character. MVC. She was the generalist support. She was the pick for anomaly. She was the pick for attack. She was the pick for everything. Whereas now we're getting more limited S-rank supports. Eventually we're going to get Lucia. We have Yuzuha for anomaly, but it doesn't diminish the fact that Astra is still really flippin' good. I'd argue still most valuable. Yeah, I think I would agree. I think she is still the most valuable. Okay, so last time I put Sanby in okay. However, since then, we had the rest of the New Eridu Defense Force in Orphie and Seed. I think Sanby actually now belongs in tier 1. But it does rely on you having like one of her limited S-rank teammates. So you could also make the argument for tier 2. If you've already pulled Orphie or Seed, I don't think that pulling Sanby is too crazy. And I think when she comes back in 2.3, Orphie pullers will be having a pretty good time. Genuinely. I think that she's already the pick for Orphie teams. People are getting like 50k plus with Sanby and Orphie and is it Astra, Sanby, Orphie, Astra, or Sanby, Orphie, Trigger? She's already in a great spot. In fact, she's actually doing similar numbers to Seed, and we'll talk about Seed a little bit later, but she's doing similar numbers to Seed, and this is pre-buff. So I think by the time she comes back around, considering the fact that the buffs are pretty much a lock for 2.3, I think Sanby's going to be a good pull. Okay, Vivian. I'm considering putting her in tier 0. And this is something I explained the last time I did the tier list, but if you consider Yuzuha and Astra, they can both work across attack teams, anomaly teams, you know, whatever team you need them to buff, they can buff it. You know, Astra might be better in your crit-based teams, and then Yuzuha's going to be better in your anomaly-based teams. Whereas Vivian, and when we're talking about pull value, Vivian probably doesn't belong up here because you need at least one other anomaly on-field driver. And to be fair, you can definitely do that with a, you know, like a Piper or something. You could definitely do it with Piper. Like, it's not like you need to pull an agent for her. But yeah, I think she belongs in the good tier because you need something else as well. It's not like you can just throw her into a team and have it be great. And I haven't looked at the new Predwin tier list update, but she was in tier 0 for Predwin. And I think it makes sense for Predwin to keep her in tier 0 because as an anomaly off-field, like sub-DPS or whatever they want to call it, like, she is the best. She is the best of the best. But from a pull value perspective, like, if you just don't have an anomaly on-field driver, she's probably still going to get you to 20k, but she's not going to, like, make your team absolutely sing. The Void Hunter level Yixuan. This is where things get a little bit toxic. Yeah. She's still good, okay? She is still a good pull. If we're considering her without her engine, I don't think that she's quite Miyabi level. And I think that that's starting to show now that we're not getting buffs that are absolutely insanely good and shilly for her. I think that she's still a very good pull. In fact, like, if we were tiering within the tier, she is the best DPS within tier 1. Like, she's great. She's absolutely fantastic. She's good. She's not a best pull. I think when we're talking about best pulls, we're kind of talking about when they come back around, pretty much the whole community is saying, oh, you should definitely pull this character. I think Miyabi still is, despite all the anti-shill stuff, I think Miyabi still belongs up here. I think Yixuan, on the other hand, kind of doesn't. When we start incorporating the fact that we can run like slightly more expensive teams with her, like let's say when Lucia comes out as a Rupture support character, maybe things might change. Maybe we'll consider moving her up again. But yeah, I think for now she's a tier 1. She's a good pull. Let's just tier these two together, Hugo and Ellen. It sucks because it feels like the ice resistant stuff is it sucks for these guys. Like, it really does. Because if we think about it, we have anomaly ice bosses. Now, we haven't seen Bringer since 1.7, but we've had Dead End Butcher pretty regularly, and Dead End Butcher is now like the Miyabi fight, I guess. The problem with Dead End Butcher for Hugo and Ellen is it's really, really hard for them because it's an anomaly fight, right? You're actually much better off bringing anomaly characters who aren't ice in order to win that fight. So I think that they're suffering from that, from Miyabi being pretty good, and that fight is being specifically balanced around Miyabi. Now, what's going to happen when we get our next ice DPS? Well, what do you think's going to happen when we get our Rupture ice DPS? Yeah, it's not going to be good for these guys either. I guess into neutral content, because Pompey isn't ice weak. Like, we just ran an M0 Hugo into that fight, and it was okay. I'm sure Ellen would also be okay as well. I think they go as a pair, and I think they go into tier 2. Maybe tier 3 is a little bit too harsh. I'm being too negative about the potential future for what's happening to these characters. So yeah, I think maybe we'll put them into tier 2. We'll say they're okay, and then we'll go from there. The thing is as well is that we do have another ice DPS coming, so we might get some more neutral ice content, maybe anti-anomaly ice content that in theory Hugo and Ellen would actually be okay on. But again, we're rating them right now. So I think maybe I'm being too future thinking by being like, oh, it could be really bad, guys. But actually, it's a case of like, well, they're okay pulls right now. I think they're still okay pulls. Caesar. Okay, so last time we rated Caesar, we put her in tier 2. I don't think that there's any fight other than in the battle tower where you would want Caesar over another character. Now, can she help you to clear? Can she help you to get 20k? For example, if you were running, you know, a standard kind of attack character into a boss, could she function as the stun agent to provide you with a buff and at the same time also help you to stun? Yes, absolutely. I love her as a character. I think, though, that now considering all of the other options that we have and the fact that our limited S-rank characters keep getting better and better, if Caesar came back around again, I would be saying, guys, maybe no, maybe don't. She's still usable. She is still usable. But I think you get more value out of pretty much anyone else at this point. And just to be clear, when we're putting them in the tier 3, the niche pulls, it doesn't mean they're useless. She's still fine. Like, if you want to pull her because you don't like getting hit, like, yeah, you can pull her. And then if you're quite happy just getting your 2 stars and bouncing out without like really stressing too much about it, and the biggest problem is that you die, then yeah, sure, you can pull Caesar. But yeah, honestly, I think she needs a buff, genuinely. I don't really think anything's changed for Qingyi. I'm between the two. I think she stays in tier 2. Is she best in slot for anyone? I think, yeah, Qingyi's problem is that she's good with like burst style DPSs like Zhu Yuan and Harumasa, but I think for both of those agents would potentially prefer other characters, especially in Deadly Assault. Like, Trigger's really good with both of them. Even though they are burst style DPSs, they still benefit a little bit from doing stuff. I think she's still okay. All right. Then we have Yanagi. Now, Yanagi went in the tier 1. She only does everything. PlayStation, Yanagi. But I actually think with the way things are changing, the anomaly debuffs, potentially devaluing her even against electric weak content, plus the, you know, a new on-field DPS coming out, which is probably preferable in a lot of circumstances for anomaly, I think she actually moves down to okay. I'm just thinking from a pull value perspective, does she still deserve tier 1? Because she can still do everything. She can drive an on-field, she can be a Miyabi support, and she can be in like a quick swap kind of style with someone else who wants to be on-field, like Jane or Alice. Look, guys, you all know how much I love Yanagi. I don't think it's as straightforward as just being like, yeah, she's a good pull now. I think it's more like, yeah, she's an okay pull. If you know what you want to do with her, she will be fine. If you have a plan for where you're going to use her, she's fine. It's not just a case of like, oh, okay, she just carries, you know, because that's kind of what tier 1's starting to look like now. I think it's time. I think it's time she moves down. I do think that she's at the very top. Like, if we tiered within the tiers, she deserves to be at the top, but we don't. I I think that it's time for her to move down. And we're moving on to Zhu Yuan. Zhu Yuan still okay, I would say. She's still, outside of Yixuan, she's still the only other ether DPS, right? Wait, is my brain broken? Still perfectly fine with like the Astra Nicole team. Can still clear with like a, super F2P friendly. Probably not A rank Ambi and Nicole so much anymore, but yeah, she can still clear though with Nicole plus, someone. Maybe, did we clear Nicole Lucy with the last time Miasma Priest was on? And that was when he had well over 100 million HP. So yeah, she's still doing okay. She still belongs in tier 2. She's still okay. She's still an okay pull. I don't really think we'll get the opportunity to pull her again before we update this tier list, and at which point things might very well have changed as well. I think the fact that she works so well with Nicole goes really, really well in her favor. She benefits from not just the Death Shred, but the ether damage bonus, and I think that's awesome. Harumasa. M0 without engine. Yeah. He's been outclassed. There's now more electric DPSs in the game with Sanby and now Seed as well, who are just better than him, and sometimes, honestly, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. If you learn him, he can be tier 2. Yeah, I think he deserves, the way that Predwin do it, they have the expert tag, right? I think he deserves that expert tag, and I think, to be honest, if you learn to play him and play him like pretty decently well, yeah, you could argue that he belongs right here with Zhu Yuan. His damage output is very, very similar to Zhu Yuan's, except, he's electric and she's ether. But I think for most players, like, if he comes back around onto a new banner again, this is what we have to think about, right? This is a pull value tier list. If he comes back around onto a new banner in 2.3 and someone watches this video, I'm going to be on record saying you probably shouldn't pull Harumasa. Pre-Wen also caved and started breaking agents with limited SIGs. Pussies. Yeah, anyway, we're moving on. Burnice, go! I think I was toying with tier 3 and tier 2 last time, but I think it's still tier 2. Kind of like Vivian, though. She needs another character. You need to have another anomaly character in order for her to work well. Now, it can be Piper. Piper can do a really good job with Burnice, but it does require that you have built other characters. Tier 3 just because Vivian exists. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that Vivian is just better than Burnice in every single fight. Any fight where you had the choice of Vivian and Burnice, you would just always take Vivian and never take Burnice. I also think, though, like, for the players that have Burnice, does she still do a good enough job? Does she still do an okay job? Yeah, she does. She does do an okay job. I think last time we put Fufu in tier 2, I think she stays in tier 2. I think she belongs in the same tier as Trigger, and I think this is the mistake I made last time, is that I ended up putting Fufu in tier 2 and then Trigger in tier 1, and then without engine, they're basically the same. Fufu's value potentially does go up with more rupture agents. Yeah, I see that comment. I see you, Forkhead. Thank you very much. I think potentially, yeah, more rupture agents is more better for Fufu. But where we are right now in 2.2, yeah, I think she belongs in tier 2. Okay, yeah, Jane is niche, yeah. I think she went in tier 3 last time. She's going in tier 3 again. I think that the reason that you would pull Jane is you want a waifu pull, and that's completely fine. The reality of Jane is that sometimes Piper is actually just better. It's kind of sad, but also true. I guess you could argue that, when you're pulling a limited S rank, when you get Piper at M6, there's no way to go up. But like in theory with Jane, there is potential for more vertical investment with her engine, with her mindscapes, stuff like that. I'm not necessarily saying that Piper is better than Jane, but what I am saying is that Jane definitely belongs in niche, especially because we have another limited S rank physical anomaly agent who's just better than Jane. Alice is excellent. She's not tier 0 though. She's still tier 1. She doesn't... I still think the Yixuan goes at the top of the tier 1 in terms of the DPSs. So I think Alice and Evelyn are probably neck and neck behind that. I think that hopefully this means for Alice that she's going to exist in a really good spot where she doesn't get balanced against, much like Evelyn, right? Where they don't have to create bosses with, 40% physical resistance like they do with Miyabi and stuff. So yeah, I think that she's going to exist in a really good spot where you're going to be able to force her against a lot of content, or not necessarily force her, but use her against a lot of content that she's neutral against, much like you do with Evelyn. So yeah, I think that Alice is in a really good spot. She's maybe, top 3, 4 DPSs in the game. She's a really good pickup. I think, obviously, she only came out in 2.1, so maybe a little bit of recency bias speaking. But yeah, Alice is a great character. Alice was skippable. Alice's peak. Alice best DPS. Guys, we're all over the place. I've been thinking about Orphie, boys. I'm not sure. She doesn't exist. Like, let's just talk ourselves out of niche. Orphie can work really well with Siege. She can work really well with Sanby. She can work really well with other on-field DPS characters like Evelyn, particularly against Fire Week content, because they're going to benefit from the fact that there's more Fire Week content. I actually ran her with a Soldier 11 against Pompey on when I borrowed an account yesterday, and it was very good, almost 40k. Plus the fact that then you can also run her, with pretty much any other DPS as well, and she's going to still function from off-field. So she's definitely not niche, because she provides a buff to the rest of the team that's just basically better than Lucy's buff. And I know Lucy's an A rank, and it is like half of Astra's buff, but that's still pretty nice. But then she also does a whole buttload of damage off-field. Are we going to regret putting her in tier 1? I think that's the question. I think that she's an okay pull. I think if you know what you are doing with Orphie and you're putting her into her best in slot teams with Sanby, for example, if you're putting her with Sanby, like that's straight up a very, very good team. It's just a very, very good team. We're going to leave her here. She goes into okay. She's an okay pull. I think if you know what you're putting her, very cool, very good. I'm glad. I think you'll have a good time. But yeah, I think she's an okay pull. We've got one left to rank. The one left to rank is Seed. Yeah, I was always going to put her in tier 2, guys. I think the reason why I was considering tier 1, though, for a second, is because she can work with a very low investment team. You can run her with Billy and Nicole and get a really solid score. Like, that's a solid team. Against Defiler, that'll clear really well. You put Astral Voice on Billy. I think, to be honest, that's part of what makes me, like... It's part of what endears me to Seed a little bit, is that she's very good for newer players who want to get the most value out of the agents that they have. I think that's what was making me consider putting her up in tier 1. But I think, realistically, and then she ends up in tier 2. It's just my opinion. Just straight up, this is just my opinion. Thanks very much for tuning in, guys. Thanks very much for hanging out. Thank you very much for contributing to the conversation, to all you all on Twitch and YouTube chat. As always, remember to like and subscribe for better than average luck on all your pulls. Pour responsibly. Stay weird. Bye. 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 Bye.